Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Kat Moonchild. I am a psychic, I am a medium, I am also a Reiki master. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be continuing our tarot card series, learning tarot. Today we're going to be doing swords. The much awaited, much promised video is finally going to be up. So don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Next we'll be doing cups. To further your education about tarot and their keywords and their meanings. So go ahead, click like down below and subscribe to this channel. You will also find in the description box the keywords for each of the tarot cards for swords as a cheat sheet if you need to review this video. I return to this video for further information just to kind of brush up again. Don't forget to grab a notebook, pen, and paper if you're following along. And you can also find more content from me at Moonchild Dreams on Instagram and Facebook. Spelling will be found above me. I also do metaphysical jewelry. And I do like to post every now and again just some uplifting information and content. So you can keep an eye out on that. If you're just kind of needing a pick-me-up, I also enjoy posting funny things. So if you ever need a quick laugh, feel free to check it out. Thank you so much. On to the video. Hello and welcome back. We are going to be continuing with our tarot lessons actually. We're going to be doing swords. I've been talking about doing swords. And I am so sorry it took so long to upload my next video. I'm going to be a weekend warrior with my videos this week. So keep an eye out for our videos the next couple days, and I will try to go back to my normal schedule next week where I'm posting at the beginning and the end of the week. So just kind of keep an eye out for that. You'll probably see another video by next Tuesday. So let's go ahead and begin. Ace, again, is a masculine energy, which is thought, will, action, going, doing, movement, manifestation, etc., etc., etc. And swords is air, which rules communication, thought, again, movement, messages, etc., etc. So we're going to go ahead and start off with Ace of Swords. As you see, symbol for air here. I think this is really nice with the wing interpretation, and as you can see in the color, again, color association, as we were talking about before in symbolism, you're getting a lot of that cloud energy, sky energy, wings, everything that really has to do with air. And Ace of Swords, really, for me, in my own personal interpretation, is about doing the thing. Do what you have to do to get the thing done. But another way of putting it is it's a very decisive thought, very decisive action. It's a go energy. And it's also about speaking your truth or communicating clearly. Just do it. Kind of like, just do it. No pun intended there, right? I am not affiliated with Nike, so please don't sue me. Alright, so Two of Swords. As you can see, again, with symbolism, she's blindfolded. She's holding two swords. In the original one, the woman has got the swords crossed in front of her. For me, again, two has got a lot to do with one way or another. I think I mentioned that with Two of Wands. You've got Libra, which is about the balance, moon, emotion. So when you're looking at Two of Swords, you can look at it as it's time to make a decision. It's time to pick a path. It's time to go ahead and push forward. This does tend to represent indecision, or a stalemate, or being locked into place by our lack of thought, like lack of action. So when I get this, the message usually is it's time to pick. It's time to choose what you're going to be doing. Okay. Three of Swords oftentimes is pretty self-explanatory. In the original tarot, it's just a heart. with 3 swords stabbing through the heart. And as you can see, the woman's crying. So again, very self-explanatory here. 3 of Swords really, really does represent sorrow, heartache, at times betrayal. It can represent separation. It can represent uh, infidelity, cheating, or an emotional betrayal. How could you do this to me? And it tends to come with some kind of upheaval or argument space. So it's not always that, though. It can, I've seen this in association with the loss of a loved one. So it's not always, it's important to know it's not always about the infidelity or the betrayal. It can sometimes just represent deep grief, heartache, or sorrow. Next, we have 4 of Swords. And as you can see, this person's got the helmet up, laying down. They're resting. They're sleeping. To me, this tends to represent the need for a mental break, honestly. Time to withdraw into silence and contemplation. You have too much going on in your mind. This does represent a need for solitude and a retreat. You know, you need quiet right now. You need some rest. So that, again, the beautiful thing about tarot is, again, it tends to be very, very self-explanatory if you really pay attention. All right, so you have 5 of Swords here. I think it's beautiful. I just noticed he's got all the planets on his knuckles, if you can see that. He's wearing war paint. He's holding the sword up like as though he's ready for battle. In the original tarot, he's walking away while these swords are on the ground behind him. And the thing about 5 of Swords is it can represent what are you fighting for, is what you're losing worth fighting, is the need to be right and the need to war and the need to fight about it more important than what you're losing as a result. 5 of Swords can represent underhandedness. It can represent you know, self-righteousness. I've seen anger and self-righteousness be represented by this card. Like, I'm digging my heels in because I've given in and I've given in and I've given, and now I'm angry because I know I'm right. And oftentimes the message is actually, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you have a point. You really do. But is it worth continuing to fight about? You know, sometimes you've got to put that sword down. And remember, the pen is mightier than the sword, you know. And if you actually look, again, something I've never noticed, funny enough, this person's laying in the background, so you have that connotation, you know, like they're defeated. You have that connotation of the battle in the background. And that's why sometimes it's really important to pay very close attention and see where your eyes are drawn in tarot. You'll sometimes see things. I've used these 100 times and never noticed that person before, so that's just a great example of how sometimes you'll find something new when you're really looking at it. But 5 of Swords, yeah, that's a unique one. Actually, I find 5 of Swords to be not always a very straightforward situation. You really have to look at the supporting cards around them. Just like with 3 of Swords, you have to look at the supporting cards around 5 of Swords to really get clarity in the situation. All right, 6 of Swords. This has got a stronger connection with like the river Styx. And when you look at this, there he's holding the light. This actually represents like safe passage, safe harbors, traveling over water. Again, the physical aspect of travel or movement, the vehicle, as we talked about before in other cards, the vehicle being the boat, representing the journey, the physical or metaphorical journey. And this does tend to represent safe passages, so that's always good. And I can see this card oftentimes in tarot, meaning like the journey you're on metaphorically in life is a safe one. So things are okay, things will be okay. This can be a very reassuring card. All right, now we're getting into 7 of Swords. 7 of Swords can be a little bit trickier too, because this can actually represent to be tricked, manipulation, sometimes even the need to manipulate, the need to be hidden, the need, as you can see, he's kind of sneaking away with everything on his back. Let me see if I can get that clear for you. Yeah, he's kind of sneaking away, leaving behind, again, the swords, leaving behind. And it's kind of important, again, the connotation or the connection. This can represent you are being lied to, you are being manipulated, or you need to be a bit hidden, a bit mysterious. You need to not let everyone in on everything you're doing. You need to sometimes play the game, and unfortunately sometimes that's true. Sometimes we have to be a little less than straightforward or blunt, and some people may disagree with me on that, but sometimes we have to be hidden to protect ourselves. So again, the context, which is the associating cards surrounding it, what is surrounding it, will give you more information about in what way to interpret that message. Eight of Swords. Her back is to the wall. In the original tarot, she's chained up, blindfolded, surrounded by the swords. This tends to represent, if you remember, again, swords is about the mind. Okay, so this is a mental trapping. She's stuck in the bubble. She's trying to push her way out, again, with that symbolism, and Gemini. Gemini, very, very back and forth one way or another. Mental paralysis, a mental trapping. I am perceiving that I am trapped. I don't have clarity. I feel disillusioned. That is Eight of Swords. Nine of Swords. This one, again, heavy symbolism. The moon, and we know the moon, again, if you've been following along, to be emotion. You have the tree bough. If you can see that clearly, the tree bough is a claw. And she's afraid of that, but it's just a tree, right? Nine of Swords, all the swords pointing down to her head. The fears of the mind creating monsters that don't exist. The fear, the mentality, the anxiety of the situation creating fear. It's really poignant to understand that when you know these cards in their abstract meaning, swords meaning this, swords being the mind, swords being the mental, swords being the communication. You can start gathering bits of information, even if you don't remember exactly what the card means or the keywords, which, by the way, I will link the keywords down below for all these cards as usual. You get, this imagery. She's in the water, emotion. Again, she's sinking into the waters of her emotions, her mental fears. It has a lot to say. So keep that in mind, again, when you're reading tarot, because it's, again, not always the way it looks. It can look scary and not mean what we think it does. It's our reflection of our subconscious. Ten of Swords. Ten of Swords for me, in my personal interpretations, is always like the worst emotion. It is, I am defeated. I am rock bottom. The thing about Ten of Swords is it represents an ending. Like, it can't get any worse, but because it can't get any worse, the situation's done. So it can actually, silver lining, be a positive. It's over. It's done with. You're still suffering, but the situation's done. You are coming out of the water. It has gotten as worse as it could possibly get. And when we hit rock bottom, the only place to go from here is up. So this can actually be a good message, even though it doesn't look like it. That's why I said tarot is not very black and white. Tarot is not very straightforward, right or wrong. Okay. Sorrow. Another sorrow card. So as you see, when you start getting into tarot, you start hitting a lot into the psychological spaces, which a lot of people actually don't know, that tarot really hits into our psychological, emotional spaces quite deeply. Page, as we said before with the pages, it can represent the birth of something, of an action, the birth of a thought, the birth of a new path. So this is new thought, new action. Or it can represent a young person deep thinker, serious little one. You know, those serious children who are little wise ones that are way more mature than they should be. 3 going on 30, right? And again, remember, all thought, all action, Knight of Swords. Sometimes this can represent rushing ahead. Again, the development or the progress and the action. It can represent moving too quickly, moving forward too quickly, charging ahead. Knights can be a bit impulsive no matter what the suit is. But this can also, again, be a young person who's very driven to succeed. So again, Knight tends to be, Knight and Page respectively actually tend to be our younger adolescents. Knight, I've seen Page represent somebody as young as 8, 6. I've seen Knight represent somebody as young as 13 to 17. But I've also seen Page represent adults. So that's where it's important to understand the context. Is this a young person or is this the person you're reading? You know, it changes the meaning of it. And again, Queen and King, very similar in interpretation, just the difference between being a male or a female, whether it's a male in soul or a female in soul, whether it be you or a person you know. We, as female, can be represented by a king. I was being represented by King for a good little bit there recently. The last couple months I've been getting kings for myself instead of the queens, because I've been using my masculine energy a lot, and that kind of surprised me. It's been a while since I've seen myself with a king, but I've been getting a lot of kings for myself, so that's something important to know. Now, these people, kings and queens, they are your critical thinkers, calculating, poignant, thoughtful, logical, analytical, calculating, but not always calculating in a bad or a manipulative way. They just are careful thinkers, careful risk takers, and they tend to be incredibly successful people. They will sacrifice their emotion for their thought. They can be a bit hard-edged with their words. They may seem a little bit cold at times. They may seem a little bit overly honest, but they will sometimes suppress their emotion in favor of thought and logic. So that's something important to know about the Swords people. Swords people sometimes are not in touch with how they feel, and as a result are not always aware of their psychological processes emotionally for what's driving them. They'll think it's one thing, it's actually another. I've seen that happen quite a bit. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's just how Swords people are. That's just who they are. And remember, you can get more than one suit for yourself or for another individual. If you're reading for yourself or reading for another individual, if you get, I see just a little hack, when I see somebody with swords and heart, or swords, hearts, oh my goodness, there I am playing cards, swords and cups. Swords and cups people, when they have both, and they're both upright, they tend to be very balanced people. They're very in touch with how they feel. They're very in touch with what they think, and they are pretty well balanced. So it's always good to see that, because sometimes, again, cups, we'll do cups next actually. Cups is the next suit I will be covering, but cups people will sacrifice the logic in favor of how they feel, and sometimes miss the reasons why they feel the way they feel. So when you have swords and cups, you get that wonderful balance of being able to analyze how you feel, become very self-aware, and touch base with that emotion so you're not just reacting. So that's something to know. These are just little tidbits about that. I know that was very simplistic and we went through fairly quickly, it seems like, but that's actually a really cool thing about swords. Swords is very straightforward. Swords is not super abstract. It can have more transmutable meaning, because again, this is about the mental realm, not the material realm, and the mental realm can be very, again, translatable in many different ways, but that's where you're not going to get a lot of necessarily literal associations with swords, because this is all about how them as people are being motivated to move forward or move on in their thought processes. So that's just something to keep in mind. Thank you all for coming. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, hit the bell notification for future videos. Again, we will be doing Cups next, which I'm very, very excited about. I love cups very, very much. It's probably my favorite suit of all the suits. And I will talk to you all later. Yeah. I love you all, my lovelies. Bye now.